People who lose a lot of weight and they're in the best shape of their life still aren't confident. People think that once I look like this, I will have that. And when you do that, you make a contractual contingency on when you're going to be confident or when you're going to start speaking up when you have something to say. The external transformation is validation for them to procrastinate on something that they are too terrified to do right now in the present. And so getting to the depths of that can help uproot some of the problems that they have. And also when they get to that transformation, it's complete, right? It's aligned. The external matches the internal. And so if you are walking through life in a way you don't like, you have the power to change how you show up in that. But you have to get clear on what would that look like? If you were confident, where am I feeling insecurities? Or where am I feeling uncomfortable? Where am I questioning myself? Where do I not have self-trust? Because that's where confidence is eroding your ability to see or show up the way that you want to. Yeah. And so it goes into the dysfunction that presents in their life. Or if they're not satisfied with their life, I will always ask them,
what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Dieting from the Inside Out. We have Kait Anne-Michelle in house.
In hotel.
I've been so excited to do this because I know I hit you up like, I couldn't remember what state you lived in. And I'm like, hey, I want to do an in-person thing. And you're like, well, I'm in Texas, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, fuck, I'm never in Texas. So
every time I hear the word Texas now, I just think of Beyonce's song that is absolutely horrible and it insults me.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's like every background sound.
So now when people see you, all they hear in their head is like, when in Texas, or whatever. So, well, good shit. Here's the thing that I wanted to, well, first of all, what are some life updates since we chatted last? Because your episode last time we chatted is like one of like a top favorite. Like everyone loves like these 3 or 4 people and you're one of those. So what is new since last time we chatted?
I am continuing to get my master's. So that's been really enlightening. I'm doing it in clinical psychology. I am focused on eating disorders and also domestic violence, and then patterning that into cluster B disorders as far as personalities. I'm really into personality and diagnostics. So that's been really fun, really, really deep, really, really interesting.
So are you like slowly like low key diagnosing people every time you see them?
Yes.
Diagnose me.
I don't see that you have a ton of outwardly presenting dysfunction.
Because I'm good. Just kidding.
Or you're really good at hiding it. Yeah.
You let already air out my shit already.
But like when you look at people who work in front of a camera or you're putting yourself out there online, not everybody has tough skin. And I think a lot of people, it's very easy to sit on the other side of a screen as somebody that's anonymous and leave comments or shit on people publicly. And when you start to grow an audience, you do get that feedback loop, right, wrong, or indifferent. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people, and I'm not saying this is you, but I am suggesting here, right, it hurts. And even if you say like, it doesn't bother me, or I don't give a fuck, or I don't care what anybody else thinks, like I've had to come to a point even in my own journey of growth is like, I do care what people think. I don't care what they think about me more than I care what I think about me though.
Interesting.
And so it's, because I think a lot of people ride this dogmatic or black and white wave. It's like either you don't give any fucks or you give all the fucks. It's like, how about you just give some fucks, but you prioritize where you give your fucks of most importance. And they should always be reflective of who you are and aligning with that and respecting that, even if people disagree. And I think that as somebody who has a larger audience, and you do talk a lot about things that people may or may not agree with, right? We're talking about psychological health in the realm of health and fitness, which most people see as totally different things. Or you're catering or pandering to people that aren't resilient or disciplined, right? And so there's a dogmatic camp more to the extreme side of fitness that might say, you know, you don't know what you're doing as a coach, you're just pandering to their emotional state. When in reality, most of the people on that side of the coin, I would suggest, not all of them, but I would say it's directionally correct, even if it's not universally true, right? They might have some cognitive dissonance around that. And I can only acknowledge that because I've done the bodybuilding thing. I've done the extreme dieting. I've gotten the validation. I wore the t-shirt. Yeah. You know, I drank the Kool-Aid.
Sure.
And so when you're working on that side of the coin with people that don't understand, you can have a lot of pressure to be like, I want you to see this. You don't have to agree with me, but like consider this a little bit for a moment. And people that aren't ready to hear that message can be reactive. And when people are reactive, we can internalize that because we care. And so if I were to guess what keeps you up at night sometimes, it's that drive to want to help and serve people that may not be ready to hear what you have to say.
That would be correct. But I'm trying to kind of word this. That would be one of the things.
Yeah.
There's a few layers to it, but or we can make this whole episode like just like a Jared therapy session. Well, to be honest with you, I'm in a season right now of getting ripped the fuck apart because I just recently switched therapists. I've been with the same therapist for the last like 3 years, and she was pivotal in my growth. It was fantastic. But I just felt like it got to it didn't get any deeper than a certain point. And I just feel like there were aspects that I was needing. I needed more product and more like be okay triggering me and things like that. And she was great. Love Pamela. But then I started working with this new therapist. Her name's Brandy. This assassin told me more in my first session with her. Like, I'm open as fuck in general, but especially if I'm like, I'm paying you to help me. Like, I'm not going to hide anything.
Hear my dirty laundry.
I'm literally going to just like, all right, you ready? And like, we go at it. I learned more about myself that she shared with me in our very first session than I've understood from the past 3 years.
So I think one thing that's really important for people to know if they're thinking about working with a therapist is every single therapist has a theoretical reference that they're using to build their practice on top of. And so this is why finding a great therapist is kind of like dating. And so as you date people, like you might date somebody, have a great time with them, but it's like not somebody you're gonna build a life with, right? But they got you through a stage of growth that you needed. They were an important chapter of your book, but you might have outgrown what their scope of practice might be or what they're specializing in, right? If you are somebody who needs some type of more reality therapy that's gonna be challenging, right? If you're working with somebody who's more psychoanalytic, who's going to be talking about your trauma and your childhood and your past and your memories, those are two totally different vibes in one room.
Sure.
Both of them have the same mission, but the way that they deploy that therapeutic process is different. And so somebody who might be very emotional or very reactive, might not do really well with solution-focused or reality-focused, Gestalt or existential types of therapy.
Right.
It's just not going to be the fit for them. They might need somebody who's a little bit more family systems or psychoanalytic in practice until they build some of that self-efficacy themselves and then have the awareness to see what's past that. And if a therapist is hyperfixated or focused and specializing in one of those theories, then getting to the depths in which somebody might need to be challenged for it to resonate with them, to get that layer deeper into the subconscious or emotional state, right? It can be preventative in that way. And so you hit a wall.
Sure.
And so that's probably, I would guess that they have two different approaches as far as like what methods they use.
Sure.
And that's why it feels so different. And she's able to get a few layers deeper with you.
Oh no, this bitch is getting like 15 fucking layers deeper. I'm receptive to it. Like, I'm not complaining by any means. I'm actually very happy with this. There's a lot of things that I wasn't aware of that I'm like, oh, that's a thing. Oh, that's correlated with that thing. Oh, fuck. Like really challenging some belief systems of mine and some things that I didn't think about. Or, well, I know it's hard. I know it's one of those cliche things in therapy is like, oh, I thought I was through that, where it's like, maybe I wasn't. I know there's like some argue there's like a point of like, I am through it, or versus like, you just got to like this level with it. But, so yeah, I'm not trying to scare anyone off with like therapists being like this assassin who's going to rip you to pieces. I personally, especially for those listening, coming from a background of, I've always had a coach of some semblance, and I want someone to say, here's all the thing that's wrong. Here's all the tactics to deploy against it. Here's what I want you to do now. And I wanted that in a therapist, and that's what I found. So
I think I think therapy is great for everyone, not necessary for everyone. Right. And this is where like the popularization of therapy can be counterproductive to some people, right? Some people need somebody to challenge them to find resolution so that they can have a vision moving forward and they don't stay stuck in the same patterns, right? That's the goal, right? To have them freely associate, address the problem, heal the wound, let it scar, and then move forward with your life so that it doesn't continue to impact how you behave. However, some people can get lost in the rumination process of therapy, and it's an easier scapegoat for them to stay stuck in that, especially if they have lower self-esteem, because they think something is always wrong with them. Now, I'm not saying this is you at all, but what I would challenge throughout your journey is making sure that you're not somebody who maybe feels like there's always something wrong that needs to be fixed, because you can get obsessed with the fixing part and lose sight of the growing part. Sure.
We actually just had my last session, we had a conversation around that, which I thought was great, where she's like, no, like she literally said a lot of the same things you just said, where a lot of people are just so stuck in like almost like overuse therapy or this is not a word, Therasize almost, where they're just like, something's always wrong and it's just like digging this hole even deeper when it's like, we can move on from this, or it's something isn't wrong or things like that. So
yeah, like if you have a day where you act outside or you're reactive, because all humans are emotional.
Sure.
And then let's say you make a mistake or you do something. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that was bad. I got to go to therapy. It's like, no, if you have the awareness over that was bad, you've learned a skill and a skill of awareness. And if you've picked up coping patterns or coping mechanisms that are productive to where you want to go, then you know what skills to deploy, right? Because overall, what we want to do is give people skills. That's what therapists do. A good clinician is not advising. And there's lots of reasons for that. But one of the most important ones is that we do not want to put our hands in your journey. Right? Because if indeed we give you advice and you go out and do it and it's successful, one, we've taken that success from you because we told you what to do. And number two, you become codependent. Because then you're going to be like, oh, problem? What do I do? I'm going to go talk to my therapist. She'll know what to do.
she's a savior.
And then you don't learn how to go through these things on your own, or you do it and it goes badly.
Right.
And then you resent the person. And so a good clinician is going to use reflective questioning for you to find the solution that you need for your life. Because we also acknowledge that my assumptions, my biases, my frame of reference, what I believe, what I want, doesn't matter in this room.
Right.
This room is about you.
Do you feel the same way about coaching?
Absolutely.
I love that.
Very much so. So like when people, even I do coach a lot of other coaches, which is interesting to me, but that's just how it's worked out. And so when they ask me like, what do I tell this client? What do I do with this client? I'm like, have you gotten them on the phone? Because you'll learn so much more when you just let people talk. They'll tell you everything you need to know.
Sure.
And number two, instead of trying to impose your own will upon this person because you could do something because it's easier for you or whatever that might be, why don't you hear what they have to say and what solutions they come up with? There's two reasons that's effective. One, they thought of the solution, which means they're empowered to do it and it's realistic. Whenever we're guiding somebody, the goals that we set for them have to be realistic and they have to be achievable for that individual, right? So slightly outside of their comfort zone. If you put somebody too far out of that, they will go backwards. And so you have to be careful with how quickly you step them outside of that stuff. Right. And then they learn to problem solve and you're teaching them how to think. Being solution focused is essential to any path of growth. And so if they can't see a way out and you're always telling them what to do and holding their hand through it, then you're not teaching somebody how to fish.
Sure.
You're just feeding them.
So I'm curious, I hear some people who, on like, let's say the client side of that, who will complain about that, where they're like, I paid you to tell me what to do because if I knew what to do, I wouldn't be in this situation. So I feel like that's a gray area, right? Like you don't want to just give them the answer, even though you have it.
But I would challenge that. I would absolutely challenge that. So if somebody comes in and they say, I want to lose weight, and I say, okay, well, what do you think you need to do? They're going to tell me something. People know, right? If I ask you to sit there and say, tell me one thing that you are doing right now that you know you shouldn't be doing, that's probably impacting your progress towards your results.
Sure.
What would that be? And they will tell me something. And so the thing is, it's not me saying, I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's not how I would frame it. I'd say, okay, this is your goal and this is what you've tried. This is what's worked for you. This is what didn't. So what do you think we can start with initially that's something you're willing to do? And they'll tell me. I could probably walk a little bit more. I could probably not eat out so frequently. I could probably stop drinking 2 beers every single night before I go to bed. Okay, so there's certain things I need to work on, and some of them are interpersonal skills, which is where I love using the things that I've learned in therapy to be able to carry over to help empower them to have the ability to set boundaries effectively without burning bridges or breaking relationships or ruining their self-esteem or internalizing the reaction that somebody else has, because we all have susceptibility to other people's feelings. Right. And so in that reflective questioning, as a good coach, the most important skill that you can have is learning to ask good questions. Right? So if I attack you, you're going to shut down on me and you're not going to tell me what I need to hear.
Sure.
If I'm curious and I'm genuinely having a conversation and I might be doing some psychoanalysis along the lines with that, you don't know that I'm doing that, but I know that I'm getting to the depth in which I need to go with you to then conclude what is the best path for this person to walk forward.
I love that. That's awesome. That's really good. I like that. So one of well, I know this is the next thing I wanted to ask you, but before we do that, is there anything else new in the life of Kait Anne-Michelle other than
I ran a half marathon. I mean, that was fucking wild.
That was like 4 days ago, right?
It was. I literally have decided I'm just going to move to Vegas. I'm like, I've been here twice in like less than a month. I must move. I must move. So I don't know if that will actually happen.
How long of a flight is it from Vegas to
3
home?
hours.
Okay, that's like that's my need to hear.
Yeah. So school and business and coaching and running a half marathon and totally going into shock afterwards, blew out my meniscus. My body shut down. I was projectile vomiting. And then we ran it on the strip here. So they shut down the strip, which means you couldn't get a taxi back to where you were staying. So the finish line was 2.6 miles from where we were staying. And I had to limp my ass all the way back
Stop
down
it.
there. And if you've ever walked the strip, you know it's not just a sidewalk. No, you've got to go upstairs. You've got to go across buildings. You've got to go downstairs. It was...
Let alone the characters in between all of that.
Yes, and all the people just staring at me thinking I'm a drunk girl throwing up outside of these bars and places.
You know what? Based off of your... Well, actually, you know what's funny? Thinking about exhausted Kait, sweaty, dirty, limping, vomit. I mean, you look like there's a lot of other demographics on the strip that exhibit those exact behaviors.
Yeah. And that's why I was going to walk back by myself. Because my mom is my best friend. She's a superhero, like iconic. But at the same time, she's one of those people where my dad, right, wrong, or indifferent, he's not somebody who wants to go out and do all that stuff. He's older. He's kind of like, I want to stay home and spend time with my wife. Like, okay, cool. But my mom still got that like fire in her.
She's spicy.
So she wanted to do this with me because she knows that I will go have a time with her afterwards. Like we'll have the full experience. So she got the VIP package. There's music, there's bands, there's DJs, there's drinks, there's all this stuff. So I'm throwing up. I can't get anything down. I'm in pain. I'm swollen. I'm irritated. I made the ugly cry face, but could not have tears because I was so dehydrated.
Wow.
So like I was in the worst shape ever. And of course I felt horrible because I'm like, Mom never gets to do this. She bought this because she wanted to do this part of it. Not that the run was not important, but like who wants to run for 2 hours? I don't know, psychopaths. So
I don't get y'all, but
I was like, I'll go back by myself. And my mom's like, if you think I'm going to let you walk the Vegas Strip by yourself all the way back to our hotel, you're out of your fucking mind.
looking like a wounded gazelle.
Yeah. They're going to be like, what's wrong with her? So yeah, it could have ended badly if I did that. But luckily she took me back and she was okay.
Good. You have to have surgery or anything?
So my goal is not to do that. So I've torn my patellar tendon before. That's what ended my basketball career. And so I've done PT. I know how to stabilize, strengthen, and do all that stuff. So that's what I've been doing. I've gotten up to being able to walk about 2 miles before my knee's just done. So I'm just going to continue to build on that. If I continue to not see progress, then I'll have to. But I'm hoping to not do that.
Yeah. I tore mine. It's the middle of COVID, and I was doing jujitsu, and my partner decided to pass my guard, for those that know jujitsu terminology. And he took my lovely right heel and put it right up my ass. And my knee went. And casual meathead fashion, I'm like, tap, okay. And then I straightened it and it went back. Whatever it felt like, it went back. And I go, we're good. But I'm a meathead, so let's go again. Tap. And we start rolling again. And then it did it.
Oh, gross.
Again. So I was done that night. Went to the, luckily back home, they have like this big, we have an ortho, like an ortho walk-in clinic, which was dope because I didn't know it existed. And so I went in there and they're like, yep, you're fucked. And I was going to not go the surgery route, but then just sitting on my couch, like on sales calls, or working, mine was a bucket handle tear. So the lateral edge would flop in and out and get lodged between my femur and tibia.
Ew.
Then I'd like try to straighten my leg and like, ouch. So ended up not going well, ended up having to have the surgery and the whole 9 yards. So
yeah, it fucking sucks.
yeah, it's terrible. That was the first major, like other than that, wisdom teeth was my biggest thing. But otherwise that was like my first major whoopsie.
See, my first big whoopsie was my patellar tendon. And so everything
That's
outside,
a big deal, isn't it?
I know. That's why it's like everything outside of that, like a meniscus is like, oh, it's a little bit of pain. Not that bad. I can totally like bear through this. And it was my patella. That was the worst, like most excruciating pain I think I've ever been in my life.
That's crazy. Wow. So let me ask you this. This is one of the things I was wanting to ask you, because I know you've been going back, getting your master's and all that. Is there anything you're changing about the way that you help people or things that you're learning there that you're letting bleed into your philosophies with transformation and helping people here?
So I think a lot of the things are things that I've known, but I've sharpened my skill set and understanding of them in depth.
Got it.
So the amount of time that I will spend with somebody or the types of questions that I'll ask or how I build out a plan for somebody has differed based on my ability to read deeper into body language, right? We do behavior analysis. So this is why I love Zoom calls when I'm talking to people, because I can tell when they say something, but their body language is like, no.
Sure.
Right. And so being able to read people based on tonality, based on language, based on nonverbals, but also with what they're saying, and then being able to understand that when you ask somebody a question, oftentimes the first answer is not the true answer.
Of course.
It's just the most logical one.
That's right.
Right. And so if you can ask a better question in retrospect of that, right, then you can get them to go a layer deeper. And by the end of that call, they have already taken things that they can work on immediately. And so now I don't wait to give them something to do. It's like I have a conversation, we map out a game plan, we do this in tandem so that it's realistic and achievable, and they're excited about doing it. And then they have something to do right now, right, to move them towards where they want to go. And in retrospect of Sean's conversation today, right, talking about a lot of people get stuck doing. I see this as an error in fitness in general. I need to work out more. I need to exercise more. I need to eat less. It's something that you actually have to do instead of looking at, okay, well, you're not sleeping. You're overly stressed. You compensate with everything. You emotionally eat. You're stressed out to the gills. You're reactive as a person. You drink more than you need to. And then that leads you to overeating. It's like there's so many things that you need to focus on being first. Somebody who's emotionally regulated, somebody who's stable, somebody who doesn't let one bad day turn into a week. Right? Somebody who can look at the long game versus short-term instant gratification. And if you can start focusing on shifting their mindset in that way, it makes the process so much easier. And I'm sure you've seen this with your clients that you've worked with, people who lose a lot of weight and they're in the best shape of their life still aren't confident.
Of course not.
Their self-esteem still hasn't come up. And they think.
Or worse.
Yeah.
Depending.
Yeah.
And a bigger weight, I feel like almost.
Yeah. And so it's like people think that once I look like this, I will have that. And when you do that, you make a contractual contingency on when you're going to be confident or when you're going to start speaking up when you have something to say or when you're going to advocate for the things that you actually want in your life or when you're going to quit that job or tell that boss that you hate to fuck off. It's like, it's not contingent. You can do that now. And then it's like, oh, well, I can't because of the way I look. How does that have anything to do with how you operate or the type of respect that you deserve or how you function or show up? We can make that change today, but then there's a fear. So oftentimes, not always, but sometimes, the external transformation is validation for them to procrastinate on something that they are too terrified to do right now in the present. And so getting to the depths of that can help uproot some of the problems that they have. And also when they get to that transformation, it's complete entirely, right? It's aligned. The body matches, the external matches the internal.
Tidying from the inside out almost.
Yeah, pun intended. Instead of, right, chasing this thing and then being disappointed when it doesn't all come together the way that you thought that it should.
Sure. Let me ask you this along those lines. So when someone says, oh, well, you just broke my confidence formula, how do you think if that's one of their predominant goals, I want to become a confident human. And at least from my perception of you, you come across as a very confident, like powerful woman. So for you, if someone's like, I want to have that Kait Anne-Michelle like vibe to me when I walk in a room, you know what I'm saying? So if they're like, but that doesn't have anything to do with the way I look, or it's not predominantly how I look, where it's like, it's attached outward. How does someone go about fixing that?
So the first thing when people tell me that they want to fix something, I need you to get specific, right? So confident where? Confident doing what? Around who? Right? And why is that important to you? And the reason for that is like, I appreciate when people tell me that they think I'm super confident. I love that. I'm an intellectual powerhouse and I know that. I very much am proud of myself for the amount of effort that I've put into that. At the same time, there are many areas of my life where I'm not that confident. Dating, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so if I wanted to improve that, I would have to get clear on where am I feeling insecurities or where am I feeling uncomfortable? Where am I questioning myself? Where do I not have self-trust? Right? Because that's where confidence is eroding your ability to see or show up the way that you want to. Yeah. Right? So I don't trust myself in relationships because I've made very poor mating choices in the past. And those have led to very bad experiences, which have led to some layers of trauma. And so understanding the depth of that, it's actually not the fact that I am not confident in relationships. It's the fact that I'm still carrying patterns of my past and projecting them into my future. And so when I meet somebody who could be a good partner, I'm reading them for red flags and I'm overthinking certain things because of something that happened to me. And so that would tell me there's a wound there that I haven't healed, right? That's just one example. But that doesn't mean it impacts how I show up and talk to you here today.
Sure.
And so when we're talking about building somebody's confidence, we need to figure out what exactly they want to be confident in and why they're not. Where does that come from, right? Have you ever been confident in that arena? A lot of people have. When I was younger, before the first person that I went through shit with, I was always confident in dating. I never even questioned it. Never questioned my body image, never questioned if I was beautiful, never questioned any of those things. And so life imposes on you just as much as you impose on it. And so if you are walking through life in a way you don't like, you have the power to change how you show up in that. But you have to get clear on what would that look like if you were confident in that. If I was confident going on a date, if we were playing a game right now and we were on a date, right? I wouldn't be slouched over like this. My voice wouldn't be really low. And when you asked me a question, I wouldn't look away, right? I would sit up straight. I would hold eye contact with you and I would make sure that I was firm with what I was communicating to you.
Right.
And so you can practice those behaviors until you get confident with them. But as far as showing up confidently, if you do not believe that you have something to offer the world, you will not show up like you have something to offer the world. And people will not look at you wondering what you have to say because you don't operate or carry yourself in a way that presents yourself as somebody who has something important to share, say, no, whatever. There's nothing about you because of your own self-esteem around being in that arena that you need to think back on why you function that way.
That's awesome. Truthfully, that makes all the sense. And I've never thought about it from that standpoint specifically around like, well, in what part? Because I think we almost assume what people mean. When it's like, hey, I want to become confident, but like, well, in what? I feel like most people think it is an overarching, almost like an all or nothing thing, going back to where it's like, I'm either all encompassing confident in every area of my life, or I'm like a degenerate who like thinks they're the worst person ever. Versus,
yeah, but most degenerates are probably confident going out late at night and doing some fucking stupid shit, right?
That's
so
true.
there's complexities to everything.
Sure.
And if you guys listen to me enough, you know, like nothing in my world is black and white at all because there's so much gray. And you get to decide where you want to fall on that spectrum. Sure. Some girls are super fucking confident. They walk around in like nothing all the time.
Like oblivious almost.
Yeah, well, they feel good doing that. I personally could never, right? I could never. And like, that's not shitting on them. It's just like me. I don't have that. One, I don't think it's aligned with who I am authentically. And I wouldn't want to present myself in a way that didn't present me the way that I am all the time. But another layer to that is like, I would have insecurities about that. I personally would. I wouldn't feel comfortable. So that's not something that I would do. That doesn't make it good or bad. It's just not on that spectrum of super confident and like out there person that I would be, nor do I want to be. But if somebody wants to be something and they're not, then you have to figure out how far can we move on this scale? And then you want to slide them closer to that by taking action on improving certain things. A lot of men are not comfortable being emotional or discussing their emotions, right? And so if somebody's not comfortable doing that, well, I might probe them deeper into getting to a place where they are comfortable sharing something, right? It doesn't have to be everything. I don't need to know all of your problems. But if you can't communicate, that's probably why you have problems in your marriage.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And so it goes into the dysfunction that presents in their life. Or if they're not satisfied with their life, I will always ask them, what would your life have to look like in order for it to be satisfying to you? Because that tells me...
That's a powerful question.
Because that tells me where you are and where you want to go.
Like, I want to write that down right now. Like, it's awesome.
You can watch it back.
That's right. It's not like there's cameras everywhere.
Yeah. And that's one of the questions that when I first asked myself that, it changed my life. Because I could clearly see where the dissatisfaction was. And then I could see, okay, well, that's where I want to be. And then I could think through, well, if I wanted to go there, how would I go about getting there? And again, it comes up with people can think of solutions on their own. But oftentimes, all of us would be better off if we could take our own advice. Like, how many times have you given somebody killer advice? And you're like, I kind of need to hear that too.
Oh, like that's been hitting a little extra hard. Like stuff that I'm working on right now that's become, we'll just say relevant. Like I was oblivious to, and I was like, oh, fuck. But I'll be on like a call or talking with a friend, and I'm like going through it. Actually, ironically, I was talking with, having a business conversation with a really good friend of mine I didn't know was going to be here today. And we were talking about business stuff, kind of like some of our off-camera conversation, but a little bit deeper, mixed with some things I'm working through in therapy with some belief stuff and my own alignment things. And like, I was talking to him from almost like seeking counsel from, because I respect him and I want to hear what he has to say. But I like didn't shut up. And I needed every ounce of what I ended up saying. And I found and just by talking, like, hey man, what do you think about this? Because and then I'm like, I think I know what my issue is.
Do you want to hear something killer?
What's that?
You do not think in your head, right? The reason that we have language is to find clarity of thought. So this is why I'm sure you've had this experience. I know I've had it on podcasts when somebody asks me a question and I just go, I did not know I was going to say that shit.
It's so my favorite thing about interviewing.
So I'll have my moments where I'm like, fuck, that was good. Like, God, yes, I needed that. Yeah. Like the world needed it, but I did too. And I think one of the reasons people tend to lean into my podcast is because I am vulnerable. I'm craving the information that I'm asking people, but I also need to hear the words that I'm saying. And so it's not that I am more confident than you, maybe I found my voice earlier than you have, and that's something that you need to work on, is finding your voice and trying to, instead of fit into a mold that you feel is valuable based on your parents, family, society, whatever stakeholders are in your life, or macrocosms that are impacting the way that you see the world. Once you can find that, you don't worry about sounding stupid. You don't worry about people agreeing with you. Again, that doesn't mean you don't care what people think.
Right.
But it does mean that you value you riding that wave and walking that path more than you care about what people think about you doing it.
Sure. Let me ask you this. I've never asked anyone this, let alone on this like dynamic. And it could be controversial, but just because of the where we're in right now, when you say that you're in this moment, we'll just say we're present, we're having a good conversation, or you're in the middle of a podcast, or you're in that state, and it's just like this information just comes to you and you're like, fuck, I needed that. And where do you think that comes from? Do you believe, is it like God? Is it in like a universal collective consciousness from all of our ancestors? Is it like, where does Kait believe that genius or that information that you happen to need in that moment that just like got bestowed on you? Where do you think that comes from?
I do think it's multifaceted.
Okay.
So I think one of the things I've always told myself since I walked away from that relationship a long time ago, I was rock bottom. My self-esteem was very low. Didn't care if I lived or died. Would go to bed praying I never woke up. Like that was my life for a long period of time. And as I started to pick myself back up, I would tell myself over and over again, you already are everything that you need to be. Where that came from, I can't say. But what I can say is following that, even when I sit here and talk to you, I don't know what I'm about to say. I literally have no idea. But the words that flow out of my mouth, I feel have purpose and they do come from within. But that connection to me that I have now, as far as self-respect, self-trust, like letting go, I do feel is God. Like I am unapologetically somebody who thinks God is the most freeing thing. And people can get dogmatic about like, oh, you think there's a guy in the sky in a cloud or some shit like that. I think God in my life, especially in this period of time, because my life's underlying tone right now is letting go. And I think the power of having that ideal, because we're all broken people, right? We all have shit. Everybody's got shit. I don't care what anybody presents on social media or how you even perceive me to be. I've got shit. I will unload my shit. I am the first person to say, don't think I'm better than you, because I can never judge anybody. I've been through and done shit.
Sure.
But detaching myself from a lot of things has taken the pressure off of me, because every ounce of pressure that we experience is self-imposed. And so once I can deploy the pressure, I can think clearly. And when I can think clearly, I can speak clearly. When I speak clearly, then everything is aligned and it flows. And whatever's meant to be said that I needed to say was stated at that time. And everything else I just let go of. And so I think it's that connectedness and freedom that allows me to articulate myself in a manner that feels powerful.
Sure. I love that. I feel like I'm in the same state where I'm like, I feel like we were actually off camera for those can't see him. My buddy Ryan's over here at Body by Brian Fitness. We were talking about this, and actually this is very much what that conversation with that gentleman downstairs that I was talking to is, I'm in a state where a lot of things don't feel aligned because a lot of, and I'm trying to, Are
you anxious?
Yes.
All the time?
Yes.
Absolutely. So one of the, and I don't mean to interrupt you, I do want you to finish that thought. The most debilitating anxious moments that I've had in my life, I was on medication, which I've publicly stated before, so it doesn't bother me to say it now. It was when I was doing something that I cared about, but I wasn't doing it the way I wanted to do it.
Okay.
And so it was for me to sit back and think, like, I was just coping at that point. I was like, it's fine. I can put a face on. I can focus. Like, I can serve the people that I love because I loved what I was doing. But the way in which I was doing it wasn't me. And so it was recognizing that by trying to fit into a mold, I was rejecting myself. And the more that I rejected my intuition, anyway, I rejected the parts of me that was like, you need to walk this path, Kait. You need to walk this path. You need to go over here. Sure. And I was like, shut up. And this is also why I say in every little snip clip phrase that I say, I don't say it because it sounds good. I say it because I learned it the hard way. Right. And so like, if you live your life trying to appease the opinions of the masses, you will inevitably reject parts of yourself. And the more that you do that, you become a curated version of who you could have been. And so for me, letting go of that and truly saying, I don't know where this is going to take me. I have no fucking idea what's going to happen. but this will be an adventure regardless.
Sure.
That's why I always say do it for the plot. Cause like, I don't know how this is going to end. You don't know how this is going to end. I know we're all going to die, but like while we're here, right, let's, you know, do what we're called to do. And everybody has a different calling. But I got to a point where I was so anxious all the time. I just broke. And I had to be like, okay, you need to stop thinking about what everybody else thinks and what everybody wants of you and who everybody else wants you to be, and think back, who are you and who do you want to become? And that took fucking courage. Because that was terrifying.
Well, because there's a part of you that's dying also within that. When you're like, this is who I want to become, then that means you're also, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're like almost putting to death or letting go of the attachment you had to who you once were.
So this is where, and I cannot speak for you because this is your internal dialogue. You will know your intention and you will know whether it's authentic to you or not. But to me, I didn't feel bad about letting that part of me go because it wasn't me. It was a mask.
That's a massive perspective shift.
And so for me, it was like, I am sick and tired of trying to berating me down to try to fit into this mold. That's not who you are. That's not who you're meant to be, right? That is not you being the person that you are put on this earth to be. And so for me, it was terrifying, not because I was killing off parts of me. They weren't me anyways. I was like a chameleon molding into whatever environment I was in.
Sure.
Instead, it was me saying, I need to have the courage to be who I am. And if they don't like that, that's okay. And so that for me was the paradigm shift that I went through. But again, it might be different for you. It might truly be parts of you that you're trying to sort out. Like, do they align with where I want to go? And as you do grow and evolve, there are parts of you that you will peel off. I think of people like onions. And I know that's really not a beautiful example, but we're so layered and so dynamic. Yeah. Like
when make everyone cry.
Like when you first meet somebody, right? You kind of get the outside.
Yeah.
And then as you get to know them, you get layers and layer deeper. But many people only know themselves based on the outside presence that they have. And so until you take the time to peel that thing back and get to the root of who you are and know that, again, subconscious belief, core beliefs drive a lot of behavior, a lot of self-sabotaging patterns, a lot of self-fulfilling prophecies that we run. And so when you get to the core of what you believe, you can start to challenge that and then restructure that. And when you restructure that and then you build back up the layers on the outside, matching not only who you are genuinely, like if you listen to your intuition, it will tell you.
Right.
And then you can construct, okay, well, how do I present myself in a way that feels authentic, but also empowering? And when you do that and align those things, you become unshakable, because I don't define my worth based on external factors at all, ever. I base myself and my worth and my self-perception based on how I feel about what I'm doing. And this is why behaving in a way that is good for me is the way that I will always function despite how I want to behave. Right? Because there's lots of fucking things I want to do. I'm not somebody who's perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and what is best for me may not be best for you, by the way, right? So the way that I want to show up and the way that I parent myself, that's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's recognizing the impulses that I have and then questioning, okay, but is that good for you? Is that going to drive you to the best outcome? Is that going to align you with becoming the person that you say you want to be, right? In your heart, who you know you have the potential to become? No, okay, then we don't do that. But that takes a lot of practice because it's a skill. First, you have to have the awareness over your desires, why you desire them, right? What is this impulse or coping mechanism actually doing? What are you seeking? Is it comfort? Right. Is it connection? Right? Is it stability? What is it that you need? What is the need that you're trying to fill? And then what's another way we can do that for you?
Well, so a lot of everything you're saying right now, like it comes, the only way to get there is having like hyper levels of self-awareness, right? Yes. For someone who isn't who struggles with that, right? How do you, especially for those listening, how do you teach someone who's oblivious, right? Like, because if it's like, I think it was Dr. Joe Dispenza that I first heard it from. He said, we can't escape a jail we don't know we're trapped in. And so for someone who's unaware of their unconscious self or all this stuff, how does someone even start to become aware of that from your perspective? My
perspective is always, you will know what you truly believe if you analyze your own behavior. And so you don't have to sit there. You cannot, and I think I've said this to you before, and I got this quote from Chris Williamson, but he says something along the lines of like, you cannot think your way out of a psychological problem. It's like trying to sniff your way out of a cocaine addiction. Yeah. And so sitting there and trying to psychoanalyze yourself is nothing, but that's why talking, right, brings you clarity because you think in particular manners. You have to think through the appropriate language to put into that sentence, to give it the texture, to paint the picture that you want it to paint. when you think about things, you skip over words, you skip sentences, your grammar's not there. It's not a complete thought. It's just jumbled areas of words, thoughts, visions that don't make sense and usually go to the negativity bias, worst case scenario. And so if somebody wants to figure out or practice awareness, the first step is watch yourself like you have a spy cam in this fucking hotel room, like this camera that's watching us right now, right? It's like, live your life that way, right? Just for one day, picture yourself like a fly on the wall and just observe yourself. When you're frustrated, what do you do?
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
When you're lonely, what do you do? Wait, when you're angry, how do you react? Do you even know you're angry? Can you label your emotions? Right? Do you know the gravity of those emotions? When you're upset, what triggered you? Do you know what triggered you? Do you know why that's a trigger? And so you can go down these rabbit holes. But for me, when I first started, and I would say I have very high levels of self-awareness now. And it's
you don't say.
And it's something that I continue, right, to practice. Because different arenas will also expose you to different stimulus.
100%.
And different stimulus will pull different parts of you out of you. And so it's not that you're going to have it all figured out. And this is where fitness is much like personal development. It is a journey that is lifelong. That is what I love about it, by the way. But on the other side of it, you have to know there's no destination. You can always be better than you currently are. Always. And so recognizing that I am never going to say I'm the most self-aware person ever. Yeah, fucking right. That would be delusional at best. And so that's where you have to figure out, if you want to practice being more aware, first of all, what do you feel you need more awareness of? Is it that your wife is continuing to give you feedback that you don't listen to her? And you're like, I feel like I listened to her. And you're like, I don't know. I sat there and listened to her. Okay, well, if you are truly being present and listening to her and she feels like you're not, and you want to clarify this situation, then repeat back to her what she says to you when she's done talking. And ask her if that's what she meant when she said it. Can you clarify that with her? Because if you're truly listening to her, you would be able to say that. If you can't, then you're probably not listening. Are you dismissive in your posture? Can you take the feedback, or do you get defensive? And as soon as you get defensive, do you shut down? So there's so many ways that you can analyze your own behavior, but you have to be open to that. If you think there's nothing wrong with you, you will never get to the depths in which you need to go to change, right? Or if you shut down, or if you get reactive, right? Or if you're judging yourself, shaming yourself, internalizing that, what's that going to do? Negative emotions drive coping mechanisms. Coping mechanisms drive negative emotions. And so it's not going to end well if you can't let go of the negative emotions, even if you just play pretend for like 5 fucking minutes. Just be like, okay, I did this thing. I feel pretty bad about it, but like, let me table that for a moment and think back through what happened. Where was I? What happened? What was the trigger? How did I react? What did I say? Where did that come from? Especially if the person that pulls the trigger out of you, we see this a lot in marriages. If the person that triggers you is not the person that hurt you, they had nothing to do with it, but you're still acting out the way that you did as a protective mechanism. That's why we act the way that we do. We develop coping mechanisms because they're protective of not experiencing the same thing that we did. Right. And so that's why we can overanalyze green flags for red flags, for example, or think somebody's being too nice. They must be fucking, what is it called?
I know, I don't remember the word, but it's the first time I've ever heard it. It was, what was that? What is it? Love bombing?
Love bombing.
Is that it? Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And so somebody being kind or giving you gifts, like, nope, love bombing, red flag. It's like, what if they're just a genuinely nice guy who wanted to give you flowers? That's possible. You can't put that outside the realm of possibility. But for me, after my ex, it was like, nope, you're nice, red flag. And so I learned as a consequence to that, when people shit on me, it's kind of like, yeah, at least you're being honest. But that was also toxic. Because it was abusive. Right? But so this is where the pendulum can swing in your course correction too far. But I had to look at myself and go, okay, I went from one situation that was pretty bad to it where I was being gaslit all the time, to another situation where now I'm just being outright abused. How did I go from here to here? Why did I accept these behaviors along the way? What made me think this was okay? Well, it's because I thought they were being honest with me, because they would always kind of break me down or give me negative feedback. Like they say, like, yeah, you're pretty great, but you kind of suck at this. Or yeah, you think this, but you could do better at that. And so in my head, it was like, oh, they're not love bombing me. They don't think I'm perfect. They're not putting me on a pedestal. They're
real with me.
Yes. And so this is
do me
where
a favor, right?
Right. But I could have gone through that and been like, I'm a victim. I didn't play any part. I didn't see it coming. It's like, okay, but if I play it back, and this is where I also really encourage people not to judge themselves. Life always makes sense in reverse. It will never make sense as you're going through it. Because you now, judging you for the past version of you, what you're missing is that version of you didn't know what you know now. Because if you did, you wouldn't have done what you did. And so like letting that whole thing go and really just trying to understand what drove you to act in that way can help you then think of solutions for the next time something like that happens to function in a different, more productive way.
That's why hindsight's 2020.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
That's amazing. This is why you're an intellectual powerhouse. That's
I mean, I
awesome.
spend a lot of time doing it, but I think probably
Yeah.
like you got into fitness, or the reasons why you talk about the things that you do is because it changed your life by being able to do that. Like I said, I got to a point where I didn't care if I fucking died. I would go to bed praying, God, if you're real, don't wake me up tomorrow. You know, and it's like until I could find myself again and reconnect with that spark that was inside of me that I lost when I tore my patellar tendon and lost basketball. But again, that came from a childhood where I lost my identity in the pursuit of what I could do. So I still have a tendency to do that, which is why, you know, all the things that we do as business, you have to be careful associating your self-worth with what you do. But it wasn't until I could go through that journey and learn from that I built this that feels good to me, because it is me, that I created what I did. And the same reason I'm assuming for you is like there's something about this journey that you feel so passionate about, so convicted about, so emotionally integrated with. That's like, no, I need you to hear what I have to say. And that's what drives people to also master that skill. That's why I'm obsessed.
See, it's interesting for me, my journey to fitness and stuff it's a little interesting because I don't consider myself a fitness guy. I've never been like a fitness fanatic.
But aren't you a fitness coach?
Technically, but the thing that, well, here's the thing though, is I wrote a big email to my email list talking about this. Like people are always like, oh, you're the fitness guy, or like, what do you do? And like, whatever. The reason I chose this world is because of what it did for me. It wasn't like just fitnessy stuff. Like, yeah, there was a level of like, I started working out when I was like 15 or whatever, going to the gym, meeting a bunch of meatheads and being like, oh, muscles are dope. But for me, it was, the reason I'm so passionate about what I am now is with where it intertwines here is because I think of it as the gateway drug, or the gateway itself, and like a funnel to ultimate levels of personal development, to become the person that someone's meant to be. Because I am convinced the people who need personal development and growth internally and externally the most are not the ones that are gonna do it. Right? It's in a lot of cases, like the people that need to like work on like their internal, like their nervous system regulation and their emotional control and their growth mentally and emotionally and physically and all these things, they're not the ones that are going to that section of Barnes and Noble and like, I want to better myself, but every fucking one of them wants to lose 30 pounds and look better naked. But for me, it's like, well, that's dope. I want you to look good naked, but we can't do that until all this shit's in check. So for me, that's where it integrated for me. With this stuff. I've always loved teaching people. I've always loved being like in this moment with someone. But there's also a level of, one of my biggest pet peeves has been a pet peeve and a driving force from me for years has been, I've had such a big issue with settling. I've seen so much in marriages, in friendships and money and like every area in someone's life. Everyone's kind of like Dr. Sean talked about on tonight, is they're compromising. Whether it be they're compromising their peace, which is something that I've struggled with, or whatever it is. And I've seen so many people that I was doing it like really for the longest time, it started here. But then like you said, because this is such a lifelong journey, we can't just like stop. It's like no one's plans on stopping brushing their teeth because they want to have great oral health forever.
Well, this is the thing though. You can stop.
True.
But there's a cost to that.
Oh yeah, there's always that.
And you have to be willing to live with the what ifs. And so for me, like much like you, I always say I'm allergic to mediocrity, right? I don't want to be, I mean, I hope we're here next year having the same conversation, but I hope we're not having the same conversation next year, right? Because it would just be somewhere along the way, I lost sight of my North Star. And that would be debilitating to me, not because of what I do or what I produce, but because what I'm doing by not continuing to pursue my own path of growth is I'm not leading the people that I need to lead. I'm not giving the gifts that I need to give. I'm not sharpening the sword that I need to be able to use to slay the dragon. Sure. And it's like, if you can't move yourself to do that, then you're probably doing the wrong thing. So my question back to you is then what are you?
As far as,
because you said you're not a fitness coach.
I'm still trying to figure that out. As far as a label, okay, like professionally, I don't.
We don't need a label.
Okay.
Who are you?
How do I say that without a label?
Who are you? What is your mission? What are you passionate about? Personal development. But why fitness? You said because you think people who want to lose weight also need personal development.
For me, I believe for most people who need it the most, this is the gateway for that. It was the gateway for me.
Okay.
It was the gateway for me. I never
Now it
cared.
makes sense.
I never cared about personal development until I found out that as I start to get like the physical side in check, and then it's like what got me in like reading and studying psychology and studying all this stuff for selfishly is like, oh, these are the things over here I want. I want to be my business to be good. I want this. I want this. I want this. Well, fuck, I can't have any of it. Like these areas, I have these areas in my life I'm not that are mediocre, and I want these. Well, how do I fix those? And like reverse engineer, like, oh, that's out of whack. That's out of whack. And that's out of whack. And then it comes down to like personal standards and personal excellence and all of those things.
So the one thing that I think might help you to consider, and I don't know, this is just me giving you advice or
I'm here for it.
paradigm
I'm here
shift.
for it.
Oftentimes we will sacrifice what we need for what we want. And so like you mentioned peace earlier. People need peace. People need fulfillment. Men specifically, though women can use this too, need a vision. Right? Without a vision, they cannot have discipline.
Sure.
Without a vision and discipline, they are not productive. And a man who's not productive in society, it wreaks havoc in it. Within his own mind, within his circle, and then to the macro with the community that he impacts. And so thinking about, because you said, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. One, what are those things going to give you? What is the need that is driving those wants? And make sure that those wants aren't to validate a part of you that you think isn't enough. Because if you do that to make you, once I get here, then I'll feel this.
Sure,
once I get here,
me. Yeah.
Yes, because that's where the goalpost will always move and people will be frustrated. And then they'll wonder, I have all these things. I don't have to worry about any of this. And yet I'm not happy. And it's because you thought, and I'm not saying you personally, I'm saying anybody who might resonate with that, thought that something outside of you would fulfill something within you. And that is not how it works.
Sure. So to further that, for you, if someone is, I know there's probably like they're good. Like someone's complete, they're fucking, everything's like perfect, even though that doesn't exist. So for you, if everything is in check, there's not a part of you, you're from an insecurity or from like a protector or anything like that. Would someone have the desire to set a goal? Would that desire still be there? Or would it be different? Or how's that play a role?
So that's how I move now, because I think that there's a part of you that initially when we set goals, and I always tell this to people, don't judge yourself for this, but oftentimes when you start your journey, you're going to do it with the wrong fuel source. It's going to be insecurity. It's going to be anger. It's going to be resentment, right? It's going to be certain things. It's going to be all of those negative emotions that are driving you to change. Right. Okay, valid. But what gets you started doesn't keep you going.
Yeah.
And so that fuel source will burn out, and that's when the pendulum swings. And then you go back to this place where you don't like yourself, which gets you to move again. So for sustained effort towards something without immediate reward, right? You do need a different fuel source to keep you going. So now when I have an opportunity to do something, I do it because I know it's going to make me better. Because like I said at the very beginning of this, we can all be better than we currently are.
Sure.
So now I do it because it's good for me, because it challenges me, because it's going to teach me something. It's going to enhance a skill set. It's going to give me better perspective, right? And that's something I can share with the world from a positive direction of self-love, self-care, however you want to call it. It's because I know I'm not all that I could be. I know that I can improve. I know I have flaws. I know there's way more information out there than I will ever learn in my lifetime. So I can use that as a lever to go, okay, I'm good with me. I appreciate all that I am. I'm grateful for all the things that I've overcome and the person that I am today. But that doesn't mean I don't want more for myself.
Sure.
Right? Because I know I'm meant for more.
Right.
But the only person that can get me there is me. And so that's the fuel source that I use now to continue to push that needle forward.
I love that. It's fucking incredible. How long have we been going? Fucking A, look at that.
Fucking A.
This is exactly one why I appreciate you. I appreciate our friendship, and I love what you bring to the table. And I feel like, to be honest, I'm like about like a quarter of the way through. I'm like, fuck these guys. This is now just about like what I want to get out of this conversation. Yeah. Like they're listening, but this is now, I feel like I need a lot of this. So I appreciate that from my end. So where can people find you if they've been living under a rock and want to learn more about Kait Anne-Michelle?
If you were Patrick living under a rock, if you didn't get that SpongeBob joke, then it's okay. It went over your head. Kait Anne-Michelle on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. And then if you like podcasts, long form conversations like this, then Elevate is my podcast.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you again for being here. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.